Hello, Richard. Thank you for coming to the Rigging Bodies podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's really early morning there.
A little bit, but that's all right.
I hope it's not too cold.
No, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's not too bad today.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's start. Can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your career and journey on this world of rigging and
Oh my
3D
gosh, the world
animation?
of rigging. Well, I'm old, so we'll start with that. I got my start in 95 when I started actually touching 3D graphics and stuff. At that point, I didn't know what rigging was. I didn't know it was a career. I didn't know anything about, like, I was just getting started. I was exposed to 3D, and then I decided to leave school because I'm like, this is what I really want to be doing, and kind of went from there. I started my own business in Orlando with a group of good friends of mine, and I found that as I was working and as we were building things, I'd spend a lot of my time organizing my scenes and adjusting my things and naming things, and it's like I found that I spent a lot more time in getting everything ready for others
Mm-hmm.
and less time wanting to necessarily do animation myself.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, again, I didn't realize that rigging was a career. But then, I left that. I came out to California. I went to work for a software company here in the Bay Area. With my whole goal was to get into movies. I figured, well, if I came out, and actually at the time that was New Tech, so the people who made Lightwave. That's where I got my start. I started on the Amiga 4000, the video toaster, like to really age myself. So I was like, if I come to California, and at that point I felt a pretty competent modeler. So I was doing set work and not so much creature character stuff at the time. And I figured, if I come out and I work here, and they wanted me to be a trainer, so I was building education and building curriculum for teaching people Lightwave there. That then would send me to studios, and I would teach them. And I'm like, oh well, this is a great way to
Wow.
go meet the people that someday will want to give me a job.
That's in 95 later?
That was 2001. So 95 is
2000,
when I
no,
first started,
oh,
and
2001.
then I spent a year kind of figuring out. I knew that I wanted to do this thing. Then I got offered a job at a company. That's when I left school because I was frustrated with school at the time. I was trying to get into the film program, and I got denied. So even though I had really
Uh,
great grades, they're like, sorry, you don't have enough experience, so we can't bring you into school. And that whole idea of having to have
Experience
experience
to get it.
to get into the film program at school that was going to teach me.
Wow. So you need to get experience to learn.
Yeah, it was very
That's
frustrating.
wow.
And so I left, came back to Orlando, and then and I got exposed to 3D, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is what I want to do with my life. That's really what it came down to at the time.
Uh,
And we're backtracking here a little bit, but then I got offered a job, and when I did, I was like, I'm out. I left school. I was like, this is what I actually want to be doing, and school's not helping me out. So I, took the job.
yeah.
That company imploded after a year. Like, the guy that was running it just destroyed it, ran it into the ground, and all the people I was working with, we were basically, well, what are we gonna do now? And all the clients basically said, if another company was to open up here in Orlando, we'd have a lot of work for them. So we basically said, well, okay. So we started our own business, and we had clients right there. So the three of us that started the business turned into 30 over a 5-year period. We were running a really, really active. It was visual effects, graphics. We did 3D stuff and at the time it was for CD-ROM production.
Yeah, I remember.
So again, to date myself, and a lot of website stuff at the time. So, and then after about 5 years of that, I was like, we're not really going anywhere. And while this is great, I want to make movies. Like, that was my whole goal. So my wife and I had just gotten married, and literally a month later after that, I got offered the job at New Tech, and I sold my stake in that business. We're still friends. They understood where I wanted to go. And then I moved to the Bay Area with you know, with the stars in your eyes, and I'm going to make movies. It took about 18 months from there, and I got offered a job at ESC to work on the Matrix sequels.
Oh,
So
nice.
it worked. it was lucky. I remember my mom saying, "It's okay, son. You never know. Dreams are great, but make sure you understand that it may not work out." I'm like, "Okay, ma, yeah. I'm going to California to make movies." This is,
Y-
and 18 months later, I'm
yeah, you're making movies and
I'm
big
making
ones.
movies. So I
Yeah.
was a modeler, and at the time, doing set stuff and set extensions for the dock in the Matrix sequels. The
Hmm.
whole all the stuff down when the squiddies came down, and
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I built a bunch of the stuff back there. I mean, it wasn't just me; it was a group of us. Um, but even then, I was realizing I was exposed to what real rigging was, like this idea of taking things. And Alan, a friend of mine, was one of the lead rigging guys, and he did the Sentinels, and I was really like, oh wow, this is, I think this is really more in line with what
Oh,
I want. So I started digging into what rigging was. I started trying more things. I started really,
nice.
like, again, I didn't realize it was a profession as much. And by then, though, it was established. It was just like I was sort of heading toward it and really exposed to
Mhm.
professional rigging.
Yeah,
And then I
that's
started digging in myself. So that's sort of
that's
my thing.
really interesting. Like because as far as I know, nobody wants to be rigger from the beginning, and everybody like start doing like generalist or some work on the 3D like, and it moves slowly to rigging. But you move from like basically like sets modeling, like not to
Yeah.
rigging. So you jump from like backgrounds work to character work. That's that's very interesting that you could like see the
Well, I knew what
opportunity
I
on
wanted
the
to.
rigging, no, like the
Yeah. And as when I got started, everybody was a generalist. Like, I mean, when I had to model, I had to light, I had to
mm,
do it all. And we would get character jobs
mm-hmm,
at my company. It was called Silent Planet, back in Orlando. And I would rig them up. Again, I didn't realize I was rigging. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't understand
yeah,
it and man, some of that work is terrible. Oh my gosh. Like, I did not know what I was doing, you know? And somebody posted on Twitter just recently, where like, how many people remember adding up auto hip alignment?
oh yeah, I
Did you
did
see
it.
that? And I'm like, I was that guy.
Yeah, I did it.
Thinking that was the
Yeah,
way to do it,
yeah,
and
it was terrible. Yeah, yeah, because I did it. That was like a tutorial for Softimage 3D back in the early 2000s, and
yep,
I
early,
remember to
early.
did it and then showed like to animator friend, and I say, yeah, it's cool, but I don't have control.
Yeah,
So,
right. I don't have control. Well,
so
that theme is something that has
yeah,
definitely has changed the path of my career when you realize what animators actually want.
yeah,
But so I went through that, and like, so I was rigging. I didn't think about it as a discipline, really. I was just part of the process.
yeah.
So seeing it done as a full-time profession in person at ESC, I was like, I think this is actually where my head is. This is what I like doing: building systems, setting up systems, abstracting ideas, organize, like that whole thing. Again, it wasn't even so much characters at the time. It was just, I like this process.
Hmm.
I'm sort of drawn to it. So, fast forwarding through that and starting another business of my own, having the birth of my first son, or my one son and daughter. I got two now. Um, and really pushing my skills forward, and also having a very good friend, Jason Bickerstaff, who worked at Pixar at the time, and I knew him through the Lightwave community. We were just buddies. I went and visited him before Pixar moved into their new building in Emeryville, so I guess it was Point
Oh,
Richmond,
wow.
like
So
way,
it's
way.
like the early Pixar, like
Yeah. So I went there and we just kind of hung out, and I was developing my own character and playing around with some stuff. And from that meeting, I was pretty much like, I found my goal now. I'm like, I want to work for Pixar, and I
oh.
want to rig. I want to rig at
So
Pixar. This was
so
that.
you had like an epiphany, like
Oh,
something
absolutely.
like you remember exactly the moment that you decided, okay, I want to do this.
Yep. Yep.
Wow, that's
Well,
amazing.
it's interesting. I had that exact moment when I learned, or when I was exposed to 3D, and I'm like, I know what my life's going to be now. And
Hmm.
then I had the exact moment of when I'm like, I really want to work at Pixar. At the time, it wasn't the big sexy campus, right? It wasn't all
Mm.
the fancy stuff that's up there now. It was just I loved the quality of the work. I loved the attention to detail. Jason and I
Mhm.
are very good friends. It's like,
Mhm.
I want to do this. So all of that sort of culminated in me focusing on getting good enough to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So,
That
you know,
was on before Toy Story, or Toy Story was already released when?
no, Toy Story. No, Toy Story was like early in my career, like '95. I was still in Orlando, so
Oh,
this
so
was.
yeah, I
I
don't.
visited before I moved out, so it was like 2000.
2000.
So it was The Incredibles that just hit. I'm trying to remember what.
I don't remember the timeline for
Yeah, me
Pixar.
either. I don't actually. It's funny. I don't actually remember what movie was in
I
production at the time.
I remember the first one was Toy Story, the second one was Bugs,
Yep. Yep.
uh, and then my memory is terrible. And I remember Bugs because I still have I don't know how I get it, a poster for the movie Bugs back in the day from
Oh,
Spain, or in Spain. But I
yeah.
still have it on my parents' house on my on my room.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, this was me just like again visiting my friend, and I was like, I really want to work here, and he goes, well, we're not hiring right now. I'm like, well, okay, and honestly, I wasn't ready then, and I knew that, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go dig in, and because this is something that not most, some people don't realize
Mhm.
or don't really cognitively get is that these visual effects studios, these animation studios, they are businesses, and they are in the business of making a product that makes money,
Mhm.
and they're going
Yes.
to pay you a salary
Mhm.
to help them make this product that makes money, right? And I think some
Yes.
people lose track of the fact that it's a business. So that means that if I want to go to a business like a Pixar or an ILM or any of these big places, if I can't do the work at the level they're doing it,
Mhm.
then I can't contribute to their bottom line.
Yes.
So why would they hire me, right? And I think some people, and I've witnessed this, where they're like, well, I want to go work for Pixar, and they're going to help me be great, and they
Mhm.
will. But if you can't sit down and start doing work to make them money, they're
Yeah.
not going to hire you, right?
Yeah.
So I was very cognizant of that. So I was looking at what Pixar was doing, and I knew I wasn't good enough yet. Like I was like, I'm not good enough to rig at this level. So that's when I sort of dug in, really focused in getting my skills to a point where I felt I could work at Pixar.
Mhm.
So fast forward a few more years, and I'd been running a freelance business out of my house and failing miserably at managing the financial swings of it. And my wife and I are like, I need to go get a job again. We're like 2 months of making a whole bunch of money and not having any life working to having no work at all, having trouble paying bills.
Mhm.
It was a challenge. So I went back to Jason. I'm like, hey, you know, I got this offer from Rhythm and Hues down in LA, and you know, but is Pixar hiring? And because this is where I really want to be. And he's like, no, we're not hiring right now. And I said, all right. So I pack up my almost 2-year-old son, my wife that is pregnant 6 months, and we moved to LA to
Wow.
go work at Rhythm and Hues. And so I did that, and about 10 months later, Jason calls and says, hey, we're hiring.
Oh.
And I'm like, you're kidding, right? I literally just moved my whole family down to LA, and now you're hiring. And so I applied and did all this stuff. So I was down in LA for a total of 14 months, long enough for my wife to give birth to my daughter, for us to move a house, a whole, like, already move once,
Yeah.
because the house we were in, the people that we were renting it from sold it.
Oh.
Like, all this incredible amount of
Oh.
chaos, but it
Yeah.
worked. I learned a
Yeah.
lot at Rhythm and Hues. Those guys are really, really great. I was exposed to order of operations based deformation
Mhm.
thinking there. That was actually where I was exposed to this, because their internal tool, Voodoo, that's the way it worked.
Mhm.
So, and we'll get into this a little bit when I start showing stuff. But so my first professional rigging job was at Rhythm and Hues, and I basically, all of the deformation ideas that I had thought about and worked with all got tossed out the window because they
Mhm.
handle it very differently. It's a
Oh.
new way of solving the problem. So when I go to Pixar, and I move back up here, it turns out that Pixar also thinks about deformations in that same way, a layered approach to solving the shape problem. So I was like, well, this is great. It's basically what I started learning at Rhythm and Hues, and now I get to apply it here at Pixar. Fast forward I worked there for 13 years. I left just over a year ago, and I leave Pixar, and I go, I don't want to go back to the standard skin bind normalized weighting kind of scheme. It's like I really don't want to go back to that world. I could do it, um, and that's primarily why I use Modo. Is that Modo's deformation system is a layered stack deformation system, and it has a lot of the same thought process. So it allowed me to take basically 20 years of my experience, or 15 if we want to just take rhythm and hues up,
Mm-hmm.
and apply it and use it
Okay.
and teach it in a method that others can use too. So we didn't talk about it all about the Pixar time, but that was about 13 years. That was my path to Pixar.
Yeah, the 13 years is, I mean, that's a lot of time, and I've never been in a company that long. Yeah.
It is an unusual thing, though. I think in any of the effect studios, there's always a handful of people that have been there forever,
Mm.
and then you've got the binge and purge group.
Mm.
The fill up for a project and then let people go, and then fill up and then let people go.
Yes.
But at Pixar,
Yeah.
it's the rule more than the exception.
Yeah. This
Most
is
people
yeah. This
have
is
been.
something I love here in Japan. It's the many companies that you can stay for many years or forever. You can. Some people just get out of the university, get the first job, and they retire in the company.
That is
And
fantastic. That is not
I
normal.
I have colleagues that been my company. It's I think it's around 20 years old, and there's people that's been 17 years or 14
Wow.
years. And if I ask some people, I get like surprised, like, oh my god, it's like almost 20, like employee number two or something like that, and still there, and they're happy, and it's really well. Actually, the company is the studio is really nice, so I'm not surprised, but yeah, it's still like in Spain, you lucky if you stay 1 year in a row.
Yeah, no, it's it
It's
it it felt very unique in that respect. But that's cool to hear about the Japanese animation market, where
yeah.
they've got these companies that are
Yeah, not
keeping people.
everybody. I mean, I think I'm lucky. Also, I'm also like staff on the studio, so I'm like um permanent, let's say.
Oh, awesome.
But not everybody, not all the studios. And I think yeah, the tendency is moving towards they have the core staff and then a lot of like temporal, like by projects and things like that, or
Well,
short
then
term.
that's that's sort of the your standard
Yeah,
operating thing. So, well, where Pixar was unique is that they own their product, right?
yeah.
And it sounds like Japanese animation houses will do the same thing, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Those that's something I heard today the NPC news. I don't know if you
oh man,
there
yeah.
it's still rumors, so it's official.
I had a
Uh,
buddy of mine who's up there in Vancouver said that
yeah, and I heard
that
also in well in Montreal it's like they say they fire, but I think it's more like they don't renew because they finish projects and things like that. But still, like a lot of people moving from companies, and it's always like in the BFX, it's something that always happen, and it's always the reason because I try to avoid the VFX industry and
hmm
was more towards the like yeah like animation production or like I was working in Montreal also at Shed, that is like a small boutique for like advertisement, and we did also some feature films, but mainly like advertisement, and it's more like maybe it's not that fancy the work in terms quotes there because I think we do and they still doing like really nice work, but it's advertisement, it's short format, so it's not like this big blockbuster, but at the end of the day I think it's better for your like mental health to
well, it's a different world. I did a
yeah
week of consulting at DNEG in London.
yeah
Andrew Gordon's one of the, I guess he's a supervising animator. I don't know his title. I don't want to
hmm
take. I don't know where he is at that, but I think he's the head of their feature animation group, like from
hmm
an animator standpoint. And I worked with him at Pixar, and he said, "Hey, come out and talk to these guys." And you know, I was like, "Well, I've been in feature animation, character, animation for a decade, more than a decade. Do I have a lot to offer visual effects?" I was seriously. I walked in there. I'm like, I don't know. I'm gonna kind of talk about how I solve problems and how I look at things. And it was clear to me how different the VFX pipeline mentality, and nothing to do with talent or anything, just the way they approach the problems
Yes.
is very different, right? Instead of, oh, I have to make a character that is robust enough to handle, being in 2,000 shots over a 5-year period and hundreds of animators touching this
Yes.
one asset. It is, we have a 3-month deadline. We have to create this character. It has to be perfectly photoreal, and they've got to get it done on time, or they lose their job, or they don't make money, right? Like, that's the VFX mindset is we've got to fit it into the budget box 100%,
Yeah.
because it's a service-based project, right? The clients give them X amount of dollars, and they've got to get it done,
Yes.
and they've got to get it done quickly. So it was really interesting to look at where the focus of their energy and their tools and everything was all built on that sort of mindset. So when I came in and started talking about just how I look at problems and how I solve things, it didn't matter about software. It didn't matter about anything like that. It was like looking at ways of thinking differently, and they found a lot of value in it. It was really cool. So, after a week, it was clear that I actually had quite a bit to offer, and mainly from a different perspective. It's just, hey, this is how we did it. This is how I think about the problems. And they were able to take nuggets of that and apply it, into their pipeline. But
nice.
I'm with you. The VFX world, I don't think is a world that I want to play in.
Yeah.
I like the idea of spending more time on the craft and making these characters tight and right, and and hold up and build systems and make it where they're reusable. And I don't think I want to leave the character animation world.
Yeah, me either. Also, I like it a lot. That, I mean, the industry. Like, I'm big animation fan. All kind of animations, like from stop motion to classic claymation, and obviously
what do you think
3D.
What do you think of Klaus? Or Claus?
Oh, it's fantastic. I almost cry.
Right?
I was watching it with my son, and I was like trying to a little like at the end, like, oh, my son is gonna see me, and
It's okay, man. Show him that you're a human,
no,
and you have feelings.
it's really soft now. I don't know what's happening. I'm getting old, I guess. It's
You're a father, man.
something in my eye.
Happens.
But yeah, it was like, I don't know, man. It was really touchy, and the obviously the art. It's amazing. It's the way that, I mean,
I love it.
animation to the animation. I love it, but also the way that they render the movie, and how they treat the light and everything. I mean, that's something
just
new.
beautiful, man.
That's groundbreaking here.
And I love that we're now in a world where people can take more risks visually,
Hmm.
right? We're seeing more, like, going back to traditional things or really trying things. The whole, was it Love, Sex, and Robots or whatever? And like,
Oh yeah.
just
I'm a
wacky
big
stuff.
fan.
And I'm like,
I have a lot of friends working on all the shorts, and I was so jealous. I was contacting my friends and saying, yeah, the only thing I can say to complain about this project is I'm not involved in any of the shorts. That's
well, I just like that they're pushing things. They're being creative.
Yeah.
They're doing, I mean, the way that, like, say, Pixar does things is great. It's the Pixar way, and it works.
Yeah.
But there are more ways to do it, and they're and pushing things more in interesting ways visually is really cool to
Yeah.
see. Taking risks, and
Yeah.
there being a reward is really fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of animation was done in Spain, and my friends from Helpless directed 3 of the short films, and
Mhm.
good friends of mine. I was involved in the first 3D teasers and that they did.
Mhm.
I did all the rigging for them until they did Love, Death and Robots. So
Well, that's
I
cool,
was
man.
like, oh no.
It's so close.
Yeah, no, of course, but it was like, oh, I want to do it, but of course it was. I mean, there's really great riggers, and they did. I mean, all the shorts are really amazing technically, and I really like my friends ones, because it was the most comedic ones, like the one with the yogurt and the other with the three robots, and they did
Oh yeah,
the alternative universe for Hitler thing. It was
yeah.
great, and all other friends did the uh oh, I don't, the one on the scrapyard, the that was
Oh, I don't
also
remember the
friends of
name.
mine. I don't remember the name. The one that is like living around piles of garbage and so on, and yeah, and also the, I mean, visually, probably the Witness is the most stunning one for me. It's amazing,
Yeah.
and
Well, I just like that they're pushing things, right? So it's I think
yeah,
there's going to be the next this particular wave of work is going to open up interesting ways for you and I to do different
yeah,
kinds of things, which is
yeah.
to me is really exciting. Though, I'm now embarking on this journey of teaching fundamentals and
Mhm.
building rigs that people can use and do that. I like the fact that we'll be able to take this even further. So,
Yeah.
so do we want to like take a look at some of the stuff that I'm doing? How do we?
Yeah, that will be
I'm
great if
feeling you
we
and I
can
could sit
jump
and
to the
talk
more like
forever.
the geeky like part of the rigging of the conversation, because I'm really eager to see or to understand better how Modo works, and
Sure.
also
Well,
your approach for rigging and all these layer techniques that you was commenting before, because to be honest, I don't know anything about Modo, and I do layer rigging stuff, but wonder if it's the same approach or it's just
well, I can totally show. I got a bunch of sample stuff so we can take a look at things. That the we'll say with this is that you know I get people all the time going, you know, yeah, I'm doing this thing in Modo, and they look at me and they're like, why Modo, right? Like I actually get that quite a bit,
yeah.
and I'm going to show a little bit of why that is, and really it's, their deformation system is extremely underappreciated, and it's been live since it's like 8 years ago where they flipped the
Wow.
switch on this and really made the tools real. And for me, it allows me to
Mm-hmm.
kind of take exact almost one to one
Mm-hmm.
my experience of how I deal with shapes and how I build rigs, and then really do my own thing. So when I left, I immediately went in and started creating my own face rig in Modo. Like I was like, all right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to build the kind of rig that I want to work on. And I'm very good friends with the people that run, the Foundry and Moto. So I mean, because I honestly I started with Lightwave that turned into Moto, right?
Mm.
So the people that were responsible, so I kind of had a personal relationship with that group for years. So I started basically pushing on them when I left. It's all right, let's kind of do this thing. So um anyway, that's why I'm using Moto, is that not only do I have a
Mm.
relationship with those guys, but it solves the problems the way I like to solve problems. And it's really based on this layered approach to deformers. So let's actually, what I might want to do you want to see just a basic idea of what order of operations is? I can wire it up really
Yeah,
fast.
please.
So I mean, we've been staring at Zoe's head here for the whole time, but um, so the idea is that we have a stack, and
Mm-hmm.
and this is not unique, right? A stack of deformers is
Mm-hmm.
not new, but being that it's sort of the core of how problems are solved. So if I take this cylinder and I go here, and I'm gonna just we're not gonna do any weighting here. I'm just gonna kind of attach things fully. So if I add a bend effector to this, right,
Mm-hmm.
and I will go here, and right, so the way Modo works is, oops, wrong. That's actually add a workspace. Is that each deformer is its own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, I've created a bend, and if I take this here, right, I can bend this thing now, um, and what it does is it has an effector,
Mm-hmm.
which basically describes the deformation, and then an influence, which applies it. The basic
Mm-hmm.
idea is that I have a node that says, describe what I want to do, and then you have another effector,
Mm-hmm.
or sorry, the influence that says, okay, now I'm going to apply it. And this application, which we can see here, is how you define when
Mm-hmm.
it evaluates it. So now if I take this guy and let's go ahead and kill this here. Now if I click on this, I'm going to add a transform effector. Now you can see that I've got a bend, I've got a transform. So if I take this this locator here, I'm actually deforming this now. So it's not an actual, this is not transforming. It's not parented into the system or whatever. It's just 100% weighted to this. So what I'm doing here is imagine a joint that is 100%, bound, right? It's a rigid thing. But this order now matters. So if I go to my bend and I say, hey, I'm going to bend you now. I'm going to do this. And if I take my transform and I move it, right, it moves the whole system like you'd expect. But if I change the order and say, well, I want it to transform before it bends, now if I take this transformation and I move it, it's going to move through the bend space.
I see.
So it's saying move, then bend. And if you add another one, let's say I do this and I add a rotation effector. Now, if I do the same thing, I can say I want, let's say, by default, the rotation happens after, right? So I can do this. I can take my transform effector and I can move it, right? And it's moving through the space. But if I go down and I say, well, I want it to rotate first. Now, if I rotate it, as you might have guessed, what it's going to do is it's going to look like it's twisting through the space.
I see.
So rotate, then translate, then bend creates a different effect than a bend, then rotate, and a translate, or translate, rotate, then bend. You basically get the ability to change, right? So I can do this. And I translate, and it will actually push through, right?
I see.
So the order in which it evaluates will change the effect that you get. And this opens up, in a way, sort of a real new way of looking at how you would solve a shape problem, right? Because instead of having two joints that are competing together, always bounded between the two, right? So, I'm dealing with a bend is its own idea. It's translate its own idea. It's rotate its own idea. So I can layer those ideas in to create a final effect instead of dealing with 2 points and then find a way to move them with controls underneath. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes absolutely sense. And I think, as you say, like the stack is not something new, but I think the way that it's exposed and it's clear to play with it,
right?
It's very, very good. Because I'm just trying to obviously mentally trying to compare that to what I know that it was Softimage and now Maya, and you do kind of have similar like stack where you process, or even Max you have your operators stack. But yeah, I think visually and especially the how easy is to adjust this and try and see what you get when you change the orders. It's way simple and way clear here in terms of like
it allows you to think about each movement as a separate independent idea.
Yes.
So I'm dealing with, do I make my rotate look exactly the way I want? Then I make my translate look exactly the way I want. And then I make the bend look exactly the way I want. And I get to see how they interact together. But if I ever need to make a change to one of them, I just go to that one thing and I make that change for that one thing. And so now let's kind of fast forward. So this kind of shows the principle. But then when I go to something like this, so here's my kind of sample character. And this is just the jaw rig setup here. So let me...
By the way, you have several... This is interesting what I'm seeing here. You have several like scenes open or in memory, and you can switch between the scenes. So what we see
Modo,
here,
I can have...
it's different scenes actually. No, it's not like
they're all independent. So at one point I'm going to show my tank.
That's cool.
I've got a ball man, like little ball character. I've got all kinds of stuff to show. But yeah, they're all scenes are all memory at the same time.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you don't need to open three modos to open three scenes. You just need one.
No. Modo is actually really powerful. I know that it's like it's one of those things where people are like, huh? And there is a reality in where you get jobs and what's happening and whatever, but if we look at it just what it's
Mm,
what capable of, I'm really
yeah.
impressed with it.
Yeah, this
Um,
is the topic that you comment now. Yeah, it's for me it's the biggest like showstopper for me to jump to other softwares. It's just like the demand. For me,
I
I don't care which software. Honestly, I am happy with Maya. I think they're doing really nice stuff on the
Mhm.
latest release. I'm pretty pretty happy. Before I was using Softimage, I was happy with Softimage, but nowadays, yeah, it will be like any software that it's required for me. And obviously, if Modo
being
gets,
soft yeah, being software agnostic is a healthy way to keep working.
yeah, the only
We-
thing it's, yeah, because I'm used to Maya now, so I open Softimage from time to time for do some stuff that I know is better or is easier to do it there. But at the same time, because I'm so used to Maya, and there is also now stuff that I don't like in Softimage, so it's like,
well, I have now professionally rigged in Lightwave, Modo, Maya, Voodoo, Geppetto, Presto. I have rigged all over the place.
yeah,
Um, and so it's like I get it. At the end of the day, the principles matter,
mm,
and I'm certainly everything that I'm going to show when it comes to like shape language and building up shapes. It doesn't really matter what application you use, but I use Modo because I like this style of deformation, and my goal, if we're fast forwarding to the end here, my goal is to be able to make it easier to take this kind of rigging and this kind of deformations and get it into other systems so that it
mm,
isn't just in Modo, right? So my
yeah,
my goal is to make this a solution for people that they can use
mm,
so that it is an option, because to your point, when you're in a pipeline, you can't just swap your rigging tool out.
yeah,
It's like what's the pipeline you're working on? I mean, they're all over. There's Max pipelines, there's Modo pipelines, there's Maya pipelines. It's all over the place. But people aren't going to necessarily swap it. But
mm,
what's interesting to counterpoint that is I've watched over 20 years. I've watched that change though, right?
mm-hmm,
Maya wasn't a thing when I got started, right? It was a different world, and Maya comes in and does its thing. But
mm,
I see, I'll go to a studio and it's all 3D Studio Max, and you're like, okay, this is different. Motion Builder is a thing,
mm-hmm,
and like so. To your point, being able to jump between these different applications, understanding how they think, is a good way to stay employed.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always need to be um, like flexible. And yeah, sorry, I don't want to interrupt your
No,
presentation or
no, it's
your,
it's
but
in, it, it's an important part of the world. So anyway, this is me now taking that same idea,
mm-hmm,
layered deformers, and applying that to making this is the mouth and the jaw, right? So being able to open up and shape the jaw. And what's nice about this, and I've separated this mesh out, so we're looking at just that. But let's go here. Um, so here's the weighting for this jaw open, right?
mm-hmm,
And what's nice is that when I decide to, let's say, move the mouth corner and lift the mouth corner up, right? Or slide that mouth corner back, that slide and lift
mm-hmm,
are different deformers and different weightings for each deformer. So if this is the blend, and red here is sort of how the weighting is faded off. If I go to my mouth rig now and I say, let's look at the mouth corner lift, that's the weighting for my mouth corner lift.
interesting.
And if I look at the mouth corner slide, this is the weighting for the mouth corner slide. So you
Oh,
can see that these weights are different, and more
mm-hmm.
importantly, they overlap each other.
And that's like the base. It's like plane shapes. It's like
No blend shapes.
deformers. No plane shapes.
Now, I will say this: there are blend shapes for taste. So, for instance, when I pull, well, let's say for taste and for volume adjustments. So
Mm.
like when I pull the mouth corner back, there's no blend shapes. It's all through weighting.
Mm-hmm.
When I open the jaw, I do have a correction to do the shaping. You know, when you open your mouth,
Yes.
I realize I'm touching my face and I'm showing it. You're not seeing that.
Oh,
but
worry.
but you know, when you open your mouth, the volume in your cheeks and your face
Yes.
shrinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mass is being stretched.
Mm-hmm.
So I do use a a shape correction for that. But what I'm doing is I'm just playing. If you really want to think about it, it's along the normals of the vertices. Really, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just pulling points in to play with volume,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not using a blend shape to make the shape.
Mm.
So this kind of methodology, this thought process is you use deformers for 90% of your movement,
Mm-hmm.
and then you use blend shapes as a correction,
Mm.
as a tightening of a straightening things up or playing with volume. And by doing that, you end up with a system that is more robust. You can push things to extremes much easier
Mm-hmm.
and not worry about things falling apart.
Yeah, but this is very interesting the way that you, I mean, if it's each of these nodes or lines on this outliner, or I don't know how you call this window, the mesh.
This is basically, they call it the mesh ops list, because
Mm-hmm.
Modo, believe it or not, has a very robust procedural geometry system too.
Mm.
So you can literally generate geometry on the fly. It all fits into this stack. So it
Mm.
evaluates from the bottom up. Now, some of these things, like these folders,
Mm-hmm.
are me just organizing, right? So the
Mm-mm.
face rig versus the jaw rig. So these are
Mm.
just the different rigs that I've
But
built.
the way that you organize, if you can open again, it's like you, because normally if I do like an approach where I split my rigs in different parts that deforms different areas to solve specific problems, and then I
Hmm.
stack everything together to have the full deformation. I will do it like maybe the lips or the mouth or it, but it's gonna be an area. But what I see here is that you have like the jaw down, it's one deformation system, and the jaw swing, it's another deformation system.
Hmm.
And that's very interesting for me because normally the jaw open for me or down, and the swing probably is gonna be the same system that move the jaw. Well then.
Yeah, and well, we'll get into this a little bit too. So, for instance, here, this is me building up my rig, right? So let's say we look at the jaw rig,
Oh.
and I'm digging in to everything here. But for instance, this weight container,
Mm-hmm.
right, flows in to all the different pieces of my rig. So, for
Mm.
instance, jaw swing, jaw twist, jaw slide, down,
Okay,
blah, blah.
so you share.
All of those are using the same weight map,
Uh,
and the
can
different.
sorry, can you explain what is? I know what is the weight container, but maybe people who's it's watching the podcast they don't know. Can you explain
Oh,
a little bit the concept of?
sure. So the way Modo works is you can take a mesh and add a weight map directly to it. You're kind of your standard. I want to create a weight map, and I want to attach that weight map. However, but it also has this idea of a container, which basically is a pointer. If we're going to get mathematical, it's or programmatical. It's basically it sits there and it is ready for you. It's like a bucket, and if you toss points into the bucket, then those points and their value, their weights, then can be driven and wired into any number of deformers. So that means you can have one place that you toss your points into, and you can predefine where those weight values are going to flow. So basically, by creating this one weight container, I'm saying my jaw open, my jaw swing, my jaw twist, my jaw down, and my jaw push are all using that exact same weight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and now that you explain it that and showing one by one, I start to understand better what
Right.
you're doing on the like splitting these movements one by one. So you have like what you showed me before, like maybe one deformer, the rotation deformer thing that the Effector,
Exactly.
and it rotates in one axis.
Exactly. I'm
And
I'm saying this right here is a TX.
I see. And
It's
you share the same weight container, so you
Yep.
ensure that each of these little parts are like
playing nicely together.
yeah, and it's like they have like cohesive uh like consistency between the movements.
Exactly. And what's nice then is that, let's say I go and I do something like this, and this is an RY, right? It's just rotating like this. And what's cool though is that each of these movements, if I wanted, can have a separate pivot point of rotation. So I can adjust
Ah,
where they
I
rotate
see.
from. It's not a single joint, right?
Well,
It's multiple effectors.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know you see my camera, so you see probably my smile now.
but
It's not
but you
gonna
can
be in the
see
podcast,
how,
but
yeah, like how this, the power in this is that I can focus on making one
Mm,
thing look exactly the way I want, where I want it to rotate from. I have a lot of control over this specific motion.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to get technical as well, what's nice about and actually let's do this. Let me go into another workspace and I'll illustrate this
Yeah.
differently. So for instance, I take up my jaw here
Mhm.
and it's going to show me everything that it's wired into. And let's go here and let's go into this. Okay. So this idea here, and it's hopefully it'll become clear. So here is my jaw swing, right? And this weight container is flowing, and these little dotted lines show that it's flowing into these. And actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'm really going to break this down because I think you'd appreciate it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's do this again. I'm going to do this. So. All right, so I want, keeps wanting to bring in the assembly. So let's do this. I just want to show these guys. Okay. So check it out. Then what you're going to notice is that I actually have 3 containers here, right? And let's do this. So here's my jaw open, right? This is my, this here. There is a jaw open RX weight container. There is a jaw rotation all weight container. And then there is just the jaw all. Now,
The affected area for the other two, it's visible.
well, they're empty right now.
Ah, they're empty. Okay, okay,
This is
okay.
the point I'm getting into, is that because I can wire in multiple weight containers. So here's my influence. Remember how we talked about how there is an effector, right? So this here is my rotation. It defines my rotation for what this jaw is actually doing, right? This influence is what applies that in the stack. So effector defines, influence applies. I have these weight containers pre-set up for my users. Basically, you can hit a button and the jaw rig comes in, and then all you need to do is put it in the right place, add points from your mesh into here, and it all starts working, right? That's the workflow of these rigs.
Nice.
But I create this idea of, this is my overall jaw and it flows into everything. But if I want to just have a separate weight for just this rotation, all I need to do is toss points into this weight container and they override anything below it.
Okay,
so then
they override. Okay.
Yep. So the idea is, if I've got 3 vertices, or actually I have 1 vertice with 3 different weights, the one on top is the one that wins. It doesn't blend, it doesn't multiply, it doesn't add. It just says, if there is a value at this point, use it. And that's what this stack is here. 1, 2, 3. So what's nice is I can just do one set of weighting, everything gets it. But let's say I get a note. A director, an animator says, hey, when the jaw opens, can you tug a little bit more at the top of the head? Can you add a little bit of more movement up here? I can go into this and say, cool, I'm going to copy the weights from that main one to here. And then I'm just going to tweak it and make sure the jaw open now does what the direction was given, but I don't affect any of the other weights that are already flowing through. It allows me to go into each individual rotation, each individual translation, each individual deformation idea, and tune it specifically to what my animator and or director or production needs.
That's
That make
really
sense?
powerful. Yeah, it makes absolutely
Really.
sense. And yeah, you get a lot of how you say granularity, like
Exact
grains
granularity. It's
of little control, but give you a lot of power
right.
to be
And
precise.
and and I really love the fact that when I rotate this jaw, I'm adding movement all the way up here
Yeah.
into the face, and I'm not worried about 10 joints, 100 joints in between where I want my
Uh,
jaw to move and where I want the point to move.
yeah,
I
it's really
literally
nice.
do it. I want to make the jaw the best it can be. I want to make the mouth corner slide as good as it can be. I want to, you know what I mean? I'm able to think about these and then put them together and worry about how they interact. Granted, it's not magic. You have to make sure that when I do my side and my lift and my jaw that it all plays nice together.
Mm,
But that's just a matter of learning. And honestly, that's where say hippie we talked about hippie drum stuff earlier. The
yes.
art of moving points
Yes.
directly maps to this one-to-one. So Brian Tyndall is a mentor of mine. Like for years, I learned from him how to solve problems this way.
Yeah.
And his theory applies directly to this. I mean, this is an expression of his ideas.
Yeah, I totally. Yeah, we was talking this off the podcast, this recording, but yeah, that I used it. It was my Bible. And I took all the like the concept that he is playing it, but then I reinterpret to my pipelines. For instance, on his book, it's mainly plane shapes, and he does this combination of plane shapes that you can get some arcs. I think you did some videos on that on Vimeo some time
Well,
ago.
basically, what he did there
Yeah.
was that he didn't, at the time, didn't have access to this.
Mm,
So he couldn't use Pixar's tools, right?
yeah.
To show this stuff. So, he got permission to talk about the theory. Now, here in Modo, what I'm able to do is I don't need to use blend shapes. I
Yeah.
do it with slides along curves. I do it with translates and
Yeah.
rotates and everything else. And then the weighting, the
Yeah.
connection of those ideas,
Yeah.
it really, what you can basically do now is with the art of moving points and with this is it is a true expression of what he was trying to teach.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I was like trying to explain. Like, I did take all the theory, but I move away from as much as I could from plane shapes, and I keep like it's not the same way, but it's just like doing the formations and then the plane shapes like you do, like just for correction.
Yep, just for taste. I call it
Yeah,
it's seasoning,
yeah, the
right?
appealing.
It's
Yeah,
yeah, blend shape should be for seasoning. It's like,
yeah,
oh, I'm going to make this taste a little bit better. I'm adding a little
yeah,
curry to it, right?
yeah.
It's just to hit those perfect little shapes. And I should say, Brian's The Art of Moving Points is coming to Kitestring, my site.
That's
So
great. Yeah,
all of his content will be up and listed
yeah.
and blend in. So you'll be able to download my rig, learn how to build and use my rig, and then apply all the weighting with his theory, and it's all right there. So it's going to be really cool.
That's gonna be great, great, great.
Yeah. So now let's look at some other fun things about this particular style. So I'm going to close the jaw here. So the the lift and the slide are just literally sliding along curves. But what you'll notice is that you're seeing some cheek mass grow up, right? So as
Hmm.
I do this, you're seeing that puff, you're seeing that
Yes.
mass. Also, you'll notice that when I'm doing and I'm lifting and moving this, it's actually rolling up under the cheek,
Yeah. So it's not
right?
like a linear interpolation. You
It's
you
not
have
a linear.
yeah, you have like
So what I
way
have
complex. Yeah.
is a separate inflation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which basically this is what they call a magnet deformer in Modo, and I
Mm-hmm.
set it to repulse. So it's literally a sphere that's pushing. And I'll show you. I'll actually turn off the order of operations here, and you'll get to see it. But what's cool is I can roll this mass up and down,
Oh, I see.
right? And I can slide it forward and backward.
That's
I can
pretty nice.
adjust its amount, its size, right? Overall, how far it's going.
Sorry.
And you'll notice that I'm doing this on top of whatever was automatically happening with this. right? So this right
Yes.
now is I'm connecting my animation channels into more than one set of rigs, and the underlying rigs are then being affected by that, but they're still independent. So
Yeah,
that's basically what's
that's
happening, is that
great.
as I get to a certain point in my slide, it engages the cheek rig,
Yeah.
but I still have full control over the cheek rig to manipulate and animate it on top.
And one of the things that I really like about what I'm seeing now, it's not only the expressions that you get, but the interpolation. When you move the sliders, when you move the values, the way that interpolates, it's really organic. It's really nice to see the effect because it's not linear. It's something more going on there, and the
There's
result is
almost
really great.
no straight movements. Everything is moving along arcs because well, unless you tell it the jaw to go straight down, right? But generally everything is moving, and most of the movement is happening through deformers, not blend
Mm,
shapes, right?
yeah.
So that means by its nature, I'm going to get more organic movement, and because the weighting is independent, I can make sure that each of the weights for each of the deformation ideas blend and extend much further out,
Mm,
and at that point when you're moving the face, and let's break her real quick. um if I do this and I pull her jaw down to like dum dum land,
mm-hmm.
you can really start seeing how points up at the top are moving a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I end up, I mean, I'm at like 500 here, which no animator ever goes to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Only Jim Carrey.
In my experience, you give no limits. They're going to push everything where they
Yeah.
want. But the point is, because I made that weight look really good, even when I fire the control really, really far,
Yeah.
that means that you get these little keep alive movements all over the face, all over everything. And I keep touching my own head, showing, which isn't going to
I
help
don't
the,
see it. You don't have the
yeah.
camera, so
um,
trust you.
so, when I'm doing all these different things, you can see how there's movement
Yeah, it's really.
all over that's making a big difference. So anyway, this idea of independent weights with independent deformers and then putting them together, in my experience anyway, creates
Yeah.
a workflow,
Yeah.
a rig design where you get much more um, fidelity, much more alive.
Mm-hmm.
Things are broader, and you can see how this kind of is working in practice.
Yeah.
As I'm
and
moving these
and
things.
one of the things that I see, and also it's the way that I do rigging, but it's here because it's much more granular than, like, let's say my approach that is more like local rigs, that you do a little rig that solves a specific problem and then you stack these together to make a more complex rig. But here is so much granular that you can focus on a very simple, like, point of the rig, like let's say my jaw open, for instance. No, so you only focus on the quality, on the work of this, and
Yep.
when you have that done, you move to the next one and to the next one, so you don't get overwhelmed by the complexity of the process, because you have everything to these little steps that can I guess it simplifies for you the focus on the quality, because
Right.
you solve one little, like,
Yeah. And
piece at a
where
time.
exactly, I make the jaw open look good, I make the lift look good, whatever, and then the work comes into how do I make sure that when I'm lifting the corner
Oh.
and I'm sliding the corner and I'm opening the jaw, how do I make sure all three of those play nice together? And there is a bit of a Brian called it the balance of errors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you fire this and that, does the point in the middle go where I want it to go? And so you do end up playing a bit to make sure. So you end up making each of individual thing looking really great. Then you put them together and you modify them so
Mm-hmm.
that they play nice together. And then you end up with this system where you can really overdrive the crap out of things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can do things like this,
And
and I
that,
can,
sorry,
right?
without going to corrective lane shapes yet.
There are no corrective blend shapes here.
So it's just balancing all the deformers.
Balancing the weighting, and then all of a sudden her mouth can do this crazy stuff. and I don't have to worry about it breaking as quickly. Now, what if this is the range this character needed to work in, I would go in and I would use my correctives. First thing I would do is I would go and I would say, all right, I'm going to look at this jaw weighting, I'm going to look at this lift weighting, and I'm going to look at this, slide weighting, and I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to make sure that it's looking clean. Like the first thing I see is like my mouth corner is kind of driving up now at this extreme, and I would want to make sure that the weighting for my lift gave me a straight line at that point if I had the lip corner at the point of the right. So here's the lip top, here's a lip corner. I want to keep a straight line with when the values go where I want them to go. So I'd play around with tuning it. But then what's nice about that whole thing is that when you get back into reasonable land, right, in these kind of spaces, it'll just look that much better. Yeah. If I tune these things at these crazy extremes, they'll hold up all the way to there and even look better, in your short spaces, in your normal ranges.
Yeah, that's a great great process to go to the extremes to ensure that the usual ranges are good. And
but here, let's do this real quick because I think this is fun. So let's do this. We'll engage the cheek, and then what I'll do here is I can go through and we'll turn off the jaw rig. So now if I do this, it'll turn off the jaw. It's thinking, hey, I'm going to blow the cache right now. So she's thinking right now. As soon as you go and you deactivate something up the stack, it's got to recalculate and recache all of the...
That's interesting. So, sorry. And that remembers me, how Modo does the evaluation graph? How process the data when you have like a rig or something?
I think when I started this process a year ago, it was pretty slow. Now, fast forward a year later, and I'm getting 15 to 18 frames a second with the full face rig, which is great. And I expect in this next year it'll be up to 30 to 50 frames a second. So what they have been able to do is take these rigs at the kind of complexities that internally they haven't really seen, and they're pushing and refining their system. So right now it's completely doable. Like I feel comfortable rigging and animating a whole character in it.
That's interesting.
It'll be in my opinion, it'll be, full real time where animators aren't dealing with any, frame rate issues in a couple of months probably. Internally they've been refining the crap out of it.
That's exclusive from the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really cool stuff. So anyway, now that I've done this, you can see that once it ran the cache through, it's fast again. So
it's really nice. So it does some kind of compilation, like just-in-time compilation or something when you change the stack.
I mean, so let's do this. Let's turn off. So I'm going to turn off the mouth corners lift, and we'll do it again. It's once I deactivate it, it goes through and has to kind of recalculate its stuff.
That's interesting.
Right?
So the calculation, it takes time, but once it's everything set, then the manipulation is way faster.
Yeah, and really when you're animating this, you never touch this stuff. Animators are never going to go and
stuff. Yeah, it's gonna be a mess later.
Right, but so here it is. You can see that what I've done is in our layered deformer idea, make the cheek work, make the mouth corner slide work, make the lift work, and then open the jaw, right? I'm able to look at those ideas as separate events. And that's why, because the cheeks are firing first, that's how I can literally make this. And actually, let's do that. Let's turn off jaw, right? So this is what's happening. It's just a spherical magnet set to repulse, right? And I've got a separate rig for it doing its thing, rolling up under the skin, pushing against the mesh.
Yeah.
And then by knowing how to put these pieces together, it ends up looking like your cheek mass is puffing out, and you get all this alive. Your face seems much more alive as you're pulling things around.
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, the concept itself, it's something that I think it's similar to like rigs that in Maya or another applications.
Of course.
the way that it's executed, it's it's really interesting for me. It's it's really really new. I think.
And this again, when I left, was like I kind of wanted to show how to think this way, because I
Yeah.
think there's real power in it,
Yeah.
and you can absolutely translate. I'm using Modo as my canvas because obviously I have a relationship with these guys. The system works exactly the way I like to think,
Mm-hmm.
but all of these techniques apply and translate to any rig in any system. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to push shapes around.
Yeah.
And if I can give, the Maya artists out there, the Cinema 4D artists out there, the Blender artists out there, new ways of thinking about shapes and how shapes are moved, it will translate into your workflows too. I
Yes.
mean, the Art of Moving Points is a perfect example, right? That book, right, is theory,
Mm-hmm.
and then you apply that theory in your workflow. For
Yeah.
me, I'm taking that theory and I'm showing you how to express it with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason you can't switch it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And yeah, also something on the theory, and it's something I do is when I do my facial rigging, I go from small to bigger. The way that I stack and connect back the all the structures. So let's say I solve my lips first, and then I put this small rig or local rig. I plug it to the jaw, that is the one that opens, and it's gonna affect also the lips, but the lips are part of that bigger area. And then the cheeks and so on. Same for the eyes. It's the eyelids, then
Yeah.
the eye crease, then the eyebrows, and so on. So you go from small to bigger
Yeah.
and self-contained
Honestly,
each part. Yeah.
that is exactly how these rigs are structured here. The lips fire and evaluate before the jaw evaluates. It's just that how you and I will layer them up is just different based on the software, but the ideas layer the same exact way. You're going
Yeah,
to make those fine movements, and then the bigger movements have to move those fine movements around, and
and
they
yeah,
have to look right.
yeah. I don't remember if in Hippodrome was stated like that, but I'm pretty sure the inception of this idea comes from his book.
Well, then, yeah, again, we're both learning from the same guy.
Yeah.
Well, Brian and I've been talking a lot, and he left Pixar like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and he has been itching to get back because he kind of left the industry,
Oh.
and he's interested in getting in, like taking my rigs and building characters. His passion play right now is he wants to take this style of rigging to make a photorealistic character. So I'm going to be
Interesting.
master rigging and building the rigs for him, and then he's going to be applying them and doing this stuff. It's something he really wants to do. So and I'll have all that up on Kite String next year as we're going through all that stuff. But it's I'm really excited to work with him because he'll push my rigs to the ends of the earth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. If you talk with him, let him know if he wants to be in the podcast. Also, it will be awesome to have him.
Sure. Yeah, I'll let him know. All
But
right. So
yeah,
I
that's
think this clearly kind of explains the idea.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I've got some other fun stuff we can look at.
yeah, please. Let's more fun stuff.
This is actually here, let's do this. This is an older character. I actually did this right after Modo turned on the deformer. So this rig is actually pretty old.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
saw this rig somewhere on the interwebs.
the interwebs. So
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So this is being able to adjust things. Same idea, right? I'm layering all the let's see, let's do this, and where is it? Body, mouth, corner. Oh, here, I've named it differently. But the same idea, right? Now that you've seen on the other side, you can tell how these are being ordered together,
Mm.
right? So I'm literally saying that I want to rotate the mouth corners is one weighting versus that. Now the teeth are a funky little science project, but right. So I'm able to do all kinds of wacky
Yeah.
stuff with this, and then because it's all firing separately, I can should be wrong one. Right, being able to like pull and I can break it, but do all kinds of funky stuff here. Um,
That's but it's really nice. And also here, for instance, try to do this in like to have this kind of deformation that goes around this spheric or like very clean
yeah.
shape like this. It's not easy. I mean,
No, no, it isn't. Well, what's fun is, and what kind of cracks me up is that it with with this, it is literally one rotate.
yeah,
It is one
I was
weighted
guessing
rotate.
like, yeah, probably he has like two rotate
Well, here I'll show you the, you know,
the how you call effectors and
yeah, yeah. So, like for instance, there's the mouth corner slide, right? It's going to go through its little caching game here, and then there's the mouth corner lift, and then there's the mouth corner, the lower face, and like you can see,
yeah.
they're just individual deformers that I'm stacking up and adding in then the control to be able to do these things. So this rig with joints would be a real pain in the butt. Now, granted, I picked something on purpose that's difficult to do with joints,
Yeah, but
but
again, it's how do you approach? If you think your joint it's only one point on the center of the sphere that rotates, and you can say joint or like transformation,
absolutely, yeah,
and that's your rotation effector. So, and you
exactly,
do that in one copy. The great thing here is that you don't have a copy. For instance, to make a local rig, you need to make a copy of your geometries, do that on your copy, and then plug it to another geometry that does something else, and you
right,
stack like that. And that's here you don't need to do the copies. That's great stuff.
yeah,
For instance, in Maya, I used to blend shape the things. There's people that connects mesh outputs to inputs directly.
right,
um, I don't do it because I think it's easier for manipulate later with the blend shapes, and you can stack, or let's say outputs to one input, so you can, depending of the deformation, so you can like put two together instead of one by one. But at the end, it's just a lot of duplicated geometries doing very specific things. But here you don't need that. It's just one
yeah,
geometry, and you get automatically these inputs and outputs and process the
right.
data.
You're basically just, you don't have to manage the actual geometric flow. You basically, here it's just do this, then do this, then do this, then do that.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what points are affected, it will happen. And if the points are overlapping, then you get overlapping
Yeah.
actions.
But if you try to do this, like I guess was your original point, in a like one layer rig full of joints, and
It would be very hard.
I pity the person who has to do it.
Right.
Maybe for
Absolutely.
games, because you need to export later, and you need to go through these limitations on the what you can do and cannot on the game engine. But
Right, right. And actually, that is a space I'm extremely interested in right now. Like, is there a way, we're asking theoretical questions, of me getting this idea expressed in the real-time environment? And I'm actually exploring that kind of thing right now. Because to me, that would be to use cliche, it would be very game-changing to be able to have
Yep.
some of this
No-
idea. So we'll see. I'm
no
playing
pun
around.
intended there.
Yeah, pun intended. Anyway, so like this is so check this out. Now this is interesting. In Modo 13.2, the here, where is
By the way, 13.2, it's the latest one. I'm sorry,
this is the
I'm
latest
just
one. So
like
they've
not in
introduced
the
this.
yeah.
No, they've introduced the idea of I can now attenuate the weights and animate my weights based
Oh.
off a curve.
Oh.
So let's see, where is the controls for this? Oh, there it is. Okay, just want to get my channel set up. This was me just farting around with stuff. But imagine now, like I can set this up, and I can adjust the. I'm literally, what I'm doing here is I'm animating the weights. So I'm taking a single rotate up and a single rotate down, and I'm multiplying the weights by a curve.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can adjust the curve shape.
So you have zip flips here.
and I can do this kind of a thing.
Interesting.
And I'm animating a curve, and I'm telling the curve to scale up and down, shift left and right, and adjust its shape, scale. And then that gets live projected into the deformer through the weighting inputs.
That's really cool. Oh.
Right. So now when we look at, I'll show you a prototype. Don't judge me on the weighting here.
Never.
So here is my new lid rig that I'm not quite done with yet. So you guys are seeing some prototypey madness. But right, this lift, kind of ignore up here, right, is actually the culmination of 3 different curves that have been multiplied together in a way that makes this final shape. And actually, I think I can show. Do I have that in here? Yeah. So hold on, let me do this. I'll show you what it looks like. Disregard all the wackiness that's going on here.
So that's the gradients, not the curves? No.
Yeah.
Not that.
Well, gradients are curves. It's an internal idea in Modo that a gradient is its own thing. But if we look at what this actually is they're just 3 splines. And let's actually look at them this way. So I've got an in, I've got a mid, and I've got an out. And
again, this image of the 3 splines overlapping, yeah.
Very hippie-drome, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I saw in the book all around the place this concept of the lines.
Well, what's interesting about that, and we keep circling around, is with Modo now, I can take those ideas and express them directly how he intended them to be expressed.
Nice.
Which is the ability of saying, I want to tweak these curves and I can tweak the shape. You're seeing it live update up here. So I can change the shape of my weighting, the in, mid, and out, live by tweaking, my things here.
That's nice.
Now, if you do that, they start not adding up well. But, the idea is that I can take my in and create the in shape, and I can take the mid and I can tweak the mid shape, and I can do the out, right? And if I put them all at 100, I get my open shape that looks how I want, right? That is my default open as I've got here. And that's all this thing here, what it's really doing is just adding, the in, mid, out, and the all are all added together and then drive into the deformers. That's really all this is doing. Yeah. But because it is an add, I can keep tweaking on top of it, and then I can move the whole shape up and down.
That's really
so
nice.
This is incredibly powerful stuff, and you can use it for everything, right? Yeah. I can now attenuate weighting with any type of deformation with these splines, these gradients.
And it's quite procedural in a way that you probably can reapply easily the same rig to another character.
Oh yeah. Well,
like the reusability, it's quite high. I guess you must have to adjust some stuff, but it must be fairly easy, on
the whole mindset. And this is another reason why I wanted to do the training the way I'm doing it, is I wanted to create a set of rigs that other TDs could use. Granted, it's all Modo now, but the idea is, if you want to learn how to build a face rig, there's 20 years or whatever of understanding the technical, what you need to do to build up a beautiful rig. And then there's another 20 years of how do I make really great shapes, right? Like the 2 ideas, you can spend your whole career trying to make the best possible technical rigs you can, or your whole career trying to make beautiful shapes and get beautiful shapes in motion on the screen. And honestly, 90% of my time at Pixar was not building rigs. It was making shapes. So, and I realized that most people getting started, or even professionally, don't always have the time to take a great rig and make pretty shapes. They're fighting between both of those ideas constantly. They're like, I've got to build the rig and I've got to make the shapes and I'm on a deadline, right? Yeah. So my idea is, like, check this out. These are all the rigs that come with my rigging course, and they're just separate individual components. But let's say, let's actually look at this. Here's my new lids rig. If I double click it, what it does is it creates this rig node, right? And it has all these bits that you then just put into the right place. The whole system is designed to work by
I see.
itself. So you go into your setup mode, you grab this and you pick it up and you just put this, and these curves are where you attenuate your weighting from. So if we look at this, like this curve is the eyelid. So if you put that curve into your eyelid and then take points, putting them into the right weight container, your rig just works. Just starts working. And then you just tune the weights, you tune the shapes, and you make beautiful eyelids. You don't worry about, does in, mid, and out work together? Do I have all the different corner controls? I've done all that for you. It's a drag and drop solution. And actually, some of the kite string users have already taken these rigs, put them into their productions for final use. And it's been great to watch these guys because they don't, again, they can use my rigs and just make great shapes. And there's beauty in that. Anyway, so that's the whole plan for this is, can I give you a bunch of building blocks that you can then use yourself, as well as I do have a full face rig. You can literally drop the whole face rig in, and all the pieces are in there for you to use. But it's fun. So actually, I'll open up yet another scene. How many scenes do I have open here? Many scenes.
Yeah, you have a bunch.
So check this out. So in my experience, and you tell me what you think, eyes and tongues tend to be the same geometry over and over and over again.
Yes.
Right? Eyes, certainly. Once you have an eye package, you tend to just use that eye package over and over again. The tongue, same thing. So like, check this out. This is my, I've created a...
So you have rigged and a model all together.
Yeah, you just literally bring the tongue in, scale the tongue, scale the rig, and you have a tongue rig that does everything you want to do. And so let's turn off the fitting here. But then once you've done this, then you have all of these like little controls where you can play around with, bending and doing the rig however you want to do it. Let's see, where's that thing? I can scale the tongue, and then you can do things like pull the tongue through the bend space.
Don't show it. It's too much control. The animator's gonna ask that thing for.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I giving your animators?
I'm gonna have too much work now.
But you can see,
it's
I'm
the most complex tongue I ever saw in terms of like control that you have, not in complexity in terms of like it's very simple to manipulate, but it's a lot of options.
Right, but this is my idea. It's like you build out a rig, and honestly, you can swap this geometry out with a click.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to, you can literally dump this geometry, put your own tongue in, as long as it's in the space and fit it. You just add it to one. There's only one weight container in this entire rig. Well, there's more for refinement, but you take that, you add the points to that, the tongue rig works.
Wow. That's amazing.
And then you've got all the different bits in here, right? The squash, the tip length, the curls, the bend, all runs up.
Well, I guess now I'm thinking I'm lucky because in like anime, in the CG anime, the mouth and the tongue is.
Thank God I don't have to do this, Rich.
No. It's I was thinking, no, they have expressions, of course, and depend of the style because they may vary a lot. But yeah, the tongue is not something that they do the I'm trying to show with the camera, but it's not visible here. But like the they don't these kind of things they don't do it.
They don't do a lot of that.
No, the lip sync actually it's really simple. They have expressions, but yeah, that's another topic because it's very. I was thinking anime, it's CG anime, it's simple compared to like more like Western style, like Pixar's or.
Oh, there's lots of complexity in anime, though. Oh my God.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't be more wrong on that because it looks simple, but because it's so stylized and each frame it's like still frame, like I like the concept of this like this video says that every frame a painting, Do
Oh,
you know that one?
oh
They
yeah,
don't do it anymore, but they are amazing. These essays, and the concept of every frame a painting applies to anime
yeah.
because
No, the
it's very
I
like.
I love anime. I grew up watching Robotech as a kid. Now, granted,
Mm,
it was the Americanized Harmony Gold version of Macross, but
yes,
I grew up on that going,
in Spain it's
this
also
is the
Robotech. Yeah, and
uh,
here
uh,
I
uh,
say Robotech and say what in macros. Oh,
yeah, dude, man, that is what got me. That's honestly what got me excited about animation as a kid. Was that? So anyway, we can go into a bunch of different stuff. I mean, generally speaking, I think this kind of explains why of why do I use Modo? What am I trying to do?
mm,
How does this thought process work, and how can it be applied? Um, this one's actually really kind of fun. This was actually a pain in the butt, but the idea of being able to like play with and control, and having
the
these guys
pupil.
actually grow back, and this is the sclera, not the cornea. But here, let's actually pull this down. But one thing is like if you do a scale, I want to keep the
Ah,
iris and the pupil straight, right?
yes,
So I do this kind of a thing, and then if you rotate it,
it's
it
planar. Yeah,
it keeps it all down, right? So
yeah,
it's actually because
yeah.
it's ordered. I basically rotate first, then scale.
Yeah, if I explain you how I did that in the past with Softimage back when I was at Shed Montreal, uh, you're gonna laugh at me.
Well, no, man, we've all had to do the dance, right?
It
So,
was
but
like, and I had similar. I mean, it was working like what you have, but
yeah.
it was like, oh my god, like completely duct tape it to work.
Oh, this rig. All right, we're gonna dig in because it's fun to look at. Is absolutely. I'm about to swear. Is crazy. It is like I can't believe how much work and how much insanity went
Oh
into
wow.
making a ball rotate. It's a sphere that needs to rotate, but because the pupil and the iris needed to be separate systems that then could rigidly move inside of a deformed space,
Yeah,
it's like
you said.
all of all of the different weight containers and all the different separate weights. But again, here's the beauty as far as my users go, is that they can literally just download the
Uh,
um, the eye package, scale the eyes where they need to be, and it all just works.
uh,
So this is not
yeah,
something that people are going to have to think about
yeah.
or
And
deal with every time.
but you have these two separated. Yeah. Uh, if if I recall correctly, what I was doing, I had like three copies of the eye, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
one for the eye shape, another for the cornea or the iris and the pupil, and the third one that combines both. So I take
Basically,
the deform,
it's exactly what's happening here.
I,
It's just I'm doing it through weighting.
but to attach the cornea, the and the iris in the center, I have like this kind of like locator that was on the middle of the deformed iris, and then the other eye was attached to that point, and then with a plane shape with paint out weights from one and to the other, I
Well,
get the like the sum of the both areas.
yeah, what I love about
Yeah,
what you're describing
it's
is
like
that
that.
you and I this rig solves the problem exactly the same way that you did. I'm doing it through a stack and
Yeah,
I'm carving out my effect by weights. So I'm just saying only deal with the pupil and iris
that's
here,
funny.
and then and then this is working with everything but that. And
Yeah.
then I have another weight on the top that moves it. And what's funny is that this guy here, this is called is an item influence.
Hmm.
So what it does is it takes the movement of a locator and then looks at the difference between its start and end point, and then I can say take that difference and apply it as a deformation, but I can say don't apply rotation, scale, or shear, or whatever. I can pick which one I want.
Mm.
So in this case, I'm doing translate and rotate, but I'm not doing scale, so that when I do my scale, it's not scaling the iris. So it's moving it rigidly along a point, aligning it where it needs to be, but then when I do the scale, it's not scaling it. It's not transferring the scale over.
Uh, yeah, it's yeah,
I love
way
it. Well,
cleaner.
I love that you're basically proving our point that rigging techniques, rigging mindset is software independent.
Yeah,
Problem solving, doesn't matter what tool you're using. If I show you all this stuff in Modo, you could go into Maya and take those same ideas, and translate them into the way Maya solves problems, and vice versa. And I
Yes.
love that about rigging.
Yeah, exactly. The concept it's the same, and it's funny because when you for me I find a lot of joy just trying to solve these kind of issues.
Yeah. So you want to? I don't know where we want to finish. I don't know how long. How long have we been recording?
We oh wow, it's 1 hour and a half. I think I started the recording a little before we start officially, so I don't know your site. It doesn't say
Well, all
anything
right.
here.
One last thing, just because I love tanks. So I did this rig in Modo in 401 before there was a schematic. I literally wired this with a bunch of paper with me going, this goes into this, goes into this, goes into this, and I manually made the connections.
Oh,
But you can see how the suspension all does its thing and the treads do. I love this rig. This one's one of those,
oh,
and
nice.
there's no simulation at all. Everything is done through, math and making sure, looking at the distance between things. So if I wanted to adjust this, right? See how it pushes when it goes up, but it doesn't when it goes down?
That's great. I never did that kind of rigs, to be honest.
I love it.
I don't know how to start. So you told me.
It's super fun. All
That's
right, well,
nice.
here, let's do this. I'll quickly switch over and I'll just talk about Kite String just
Yes,
briefly.
please. Let's talk about Kite.
So Kite String Online is the training site that I started with a partner of mine, Peter McGowan, and his companies, Plain Joe and Storyland Studios, based out of Corona, California. So they have about 100 people, and they do all kinds of programming and all kinds of development, all kinds of cool stuff. And they're basically developing the software backend, and I'm helping design the front end for this training site. And the idea from the training site is I'm breaking out all these key ideas into these little chunks. So let's say I go here, and I'll mute my screen so it doesn't start talking. So then it has this and you're seeing here's a bunch of admin stuff because I'm logged in as me. The regular a regular viewer won't see all this anim toolbar and stuff. But the idea is you watch an idea. In this case, I'm talking about weighting and weight tools. But in each video, I've broken out these separate chapter markers, moments in time that have specific ideas brought out. And what's cool about these is that each of these markers are first-class citizens. So this means that I can search for and find not only a video, but a moment in time in a video that's talking about the specific idea that I want.
That's great.
Because anybody that's done any training production realizes that it's easier to create an hour-long video than it is to create a 5-minute video.
Yeah.
Anybody that consumes training, it's easier to watch a 5-minute video than it is to watch an hour.
I
So we have this
totally
thing
agree.
where content creators, it's harder to do the work, and it's harder that makes it easy for people to consume. So what I've done is say I can record an hour-long video, but I can make it so if I search for, let's say, deform, I get a search result, and I can go to the markers and say I'm going to go to at say 6 minutes and 22 seconds in this video. I go to this, and it literally jumps to that moment in time.
That's great.
And I go right to what I want to learn.
I have to
So
go.
the biggest thing about Kite String is I'm putting my content into here. The idea being that you can search and index into the specific moment, into the specific video to get exactly what you want. Each of these videos has these markers, but also has files that you can download. I've created fact information, including related videos. What are the other videos that are related to this idea? Each of the markers can also have files, fact, and related. So you can go to a specific moment in time and say, hey, Rich is talking about weighting techniques. Well, to understand that, you need to know what the weight adjust tool is. You need to look, why don't you take a look at the jaw rig, because it shows how weights are used effectively. And don't forget about gradients, because now we're looking how to animate weights. I can show you related videos and sample files to that specific moment in time. So I know that we're at the end of the podcast, so I'm trying to go really fast here, but Kite String is designed around this idea of I can do big or small videos, but the user can always get to the exact information.
And I like the concept of the string, because you go to a video and if you pull one string and you pull the string and you follow, and you get more information on each direction, no? Like pulling strings.
It's Kite String. That's exactly. You're pulling on the thread. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I like to learn that way. I want to go, okay, I want to see anim So I'm going to go through and I want to
Yeah.
see August Davies' work so I can go to the jaw. I want to learn about the jaw rig. So now, and do you know August?
No, I don't. I don't know
They're an
him.
animation supervisor at Sony PlayStation America in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known them for a long, long time. They're really good friends of mine. And so we're doing a whole series on Kite String of there's the rigging TD
Mm-hmm.
and the animation or the
Ah,
animator. How do the two of them work together to bring a
yeah,
character to life?
yeah.
So in this, they're going and testing my rig and giving me notes. I'm taking those notes and I'm applying them, and we're capturing that whole
Ah, that's
process.
great. That's great.
Because rarely do animator or students on either side get to see how you negotiate
Yes.
concept to final character.
Yeah, I'm been trying to get some animators on the podcast also to talk about the rigging from the animator's point of view and all this kind of like negotiation and dialogue between the rigger and the animator. It's great you have it there. That's some awesome.
Yep. And
And
this whole series, we're going to go through, from zero rigging to completely finished rig.
that's great.
And like any of these things, so I go
Yeah, for
mouth
sure.
rig.
I'm just gonna. I don't know how it's already available. I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
something that you can get enrolled, and it's like
yep,
how
yep.
it
If you
works.
go to kitestring.com and there's a subscribe right there. You can jump right in. Currently here right now, let's take a look at this. So
So you have like a monthly or year like
yeah, right now it's
registration.
right now. Well, yeah, I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So right now you pre-buy for the year,
Oh,
and it's monthly subscription, but you can buy it for the year. Um, and the reason I did that was because I'm giving away like all these are the rigs,
yeah, I
right?
understand.
So it kind of hurt my heart a little bit to say, hey, you can pay me $10 a month and download 20 years of my experience.
Yeah,
So, and I'm creating these really production ready rigs.
yeah,
So you can jump in and right, basically if you buy for the year, then you have access to all the rigs. We're going to flip the switch soon where
hmm
you can just do monthly. And then after several months, up to a certain point, then you can download the production
yeah.
rigs.
So you
So we're going to
unlock.
make it
Yeah,
easier for people to jump
yeah.
in.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
I would like to enroll for a few months only for the videos. Probably I'm not gonna use a Modo
and
unless
this is what
the
I'm
studio change. But I think yeah I'm very interested in watch the videos and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna learn a lot.
Yeah, well, there's over 70 hours of material right
Oh
now,
my God, 70 hours.
and but you can find exactly what you're looking for. You don't
Yeah,
have to watch 70
yeah,
hours of material.
yeah.
You're
I
two
agree.
clicks away from anything that you want to learn. So you
Yeah,
go here and you say, hey, I want to see, I want to look into the mining scene. I want to go and see how he did this, or go to Deformers and I want to learn about the morph influence. You can literally go right to that piece. So it's
yeah,
reference guide
yeah.
plus
It's a lot of work.
techniques. And then like down here with the face rig presets, like you can say how did Rich solve or how would he deploy the jaw rig? You can
Mm,
go down here and look at the jaw rig and go right to it and check it out.
yeah, it's
So
really
anyway,
really.
yeah, and
Yeah, it's really, really amazing the amount of work that you put in this because I was trying to say it before, like I have to confess that I don't know if you know, well, in the YouTube channel, I was doing this workshop like 2 years ago, like where I go
mm,
every week and put 1 or 2 videos and rambling how to do the process that I call data-centric rigging. And then when I arrived to the facial part, I wanted to make it better, so I decided to, instead of doing like these rambling videos, long videos, I'm gonna do like a proper course for that part
yeah,
and invest more time and doing shorter videos, more concise and the people. I mean, it's so difficult when you want to do it so well. This thing, like,
it's hard work.
and it. I mean, I didn't finish. I'm still I restart 2 times because I found the first one was not good enough and changed my model everything and start recording everything and try to make the structure everything and I didn't finish. I was hoping to finish this summer. We are in December. The year is about to end and I hope next year. I hope I'm trying to mentalize myself that I'm gonna finish. So if I believe it, maybe I I will do it. But
Well,
I'm amazed the amount of like work that you put here. I mean,
it is a tremendous amount of effort to do this. So I wish I could go faster, but it's just, yeah, to do it right, it takes a lot of work.
yeah.
And I'm not going to be the only one delivering content. So um like I said, Brian's Art of Moving Points content's all coming. So you're going to actually be able to see the different courses. So his course plus mine. But what's nice is that if we talk about a deformer and it's related to his work, they'll all, like the string, like you said, you're pulling
Hmm.
the thread, because you're going to be able to see his work as it's related to mine and vice versa, and
Yeah,
then jump between them with a click.
that is amazing. Yeah, definitely you're gonna see me around this.
Yeah, and like I said, we're gonna launch the monthly subscription, where you can actually pay monthly,
Mhm.
within a couple of weeks. It's gonna be really soon.
Great.
So the idea there is, it's funny. It's exactly, if you're a Maya user, or if you're a Cinema 4D user or a Blender user, there's a lot of value here, but you're not going to use my rigs anyway.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
to make you pay up front when you could literally spend 2 months learning and then decide to cancel is
Y-
perfect for you.
To
And that, I saw that, and I'm like, okay, I need to. So that's why we're adjusting the whole business model so that we can do monthly.
yeah, definitely. I'm interested in learn more about the process and the workflow, but I yes, as you said, like I'm not, I don't have license of Modo, and probably not,
It's
it's
okay.
not gonna, the studio's not gonna use Modo. I think we have, the modeling team does use Modo, or some people on the modeling team, but
I would say that Modo is in every studio as a
mm,
modeler.
yeah, it's
It is a
pretty.
that is where it got its, its start. And I'm just really excited about its rigging system because it allows me to think the way I want to think.
Mm,
And I hope that, and I think what we've shown here is that people can get a lot of value out of the thought process and apply it to whatever pipeline they want. That's the ultimate goal, is that any rigger in any system anywhere can get value from this.
yeah. Yeah, it's
So
really great. So I think, do you want to wrap up here, or do you
sure,
would like?
I think we're good. Thanks for letting me get the last little
Yeah.
show off kite string a little bit.
No, no, no. Thanks to you. I mean, I think I learned a lot of stuff today. It was really, really nice conversation, and you saw my camera, so you saw my my smile like all the time, like
Yeah.
oh, oh, oh. But it was really great to have you here, and I hope maybe in the future we can have a second episode, and maybe
Sure.
talking about how to apply all the theory to in another DCCs, and maybe new stuff
Uh,
that I don't know yet, but probably will
that,
come.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. Let's do this again, because I think in another several months we'll have all kinds of fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.